Hello everyone, Rurikhan here coming at you with another Dark Souls 2 video, and today we're going to be talking about the video that ENB made recently where he had a chance to experience the Dark Souls 2 beta, which we will hopefully have access to in the month of October. I believe it is the 12th of October. Not 100% sure, but hopefully we'll have access to that as well so that I can give my more formulated opinions on that. But I also have quite a few things to discuss in regards to the things that he announced. About some of the features that he figured out and stuff like that. So yeah, today's video is going to be mostly a lot of speculation, since even the stuff that he has seen is definitely subject to change. So take everything that I'm saying today with not even a grain, just a big old bag of salt. But either things might be the way that both me and ENB are discussing, or they might not be. There's nothing set in stone for now. However, there are quite a few things that have changed since my E3 demo, so I wanted to address some of that stuff. So for starters, the very first thing we have is the changes in a human and a hollow form. I'm going to be kind of like going through ENB's video. If you haven't seen it yet, I'm probably going to try and put a link in the description. If I forget to put a link in the description, I'm pretty sure that you guys are going to remind me and bash me over the head with that, so I will eventually put a link in the description. So if it's not there yet, trust me, it's going to appear in the next couple of days because someone is going to complain. And if nobody has complained yet, make sure that you do it. Either way, first couple of things is the changes between human and hollow forms. So previously in Dark Souls, I mean, not previously, currently, I should say. In Dark Souls, if you're in hollow form, you actually can't get invaded. And if you're in hollow form, there's actually no real penalty for being in hollow form, apart from the fact that you can't summon other players. You also cannot kindle bonfires, but that's not really such a big deal because you can go to human and then kill yourself again and become hollow after you've kindled your bonfire. So there really is not a lot of penalty to being in hollow form. However, now in Dark Souls 2, when you're hollowed, as in when you're not fully human, when you're in that form that you guys know from Dark Souls 1, you're actually going to lose your maximum hit points, an amount of your maximum hit points. Now, I actually don't know exactly how much of a percentage this is going to be because nobody has actually mentioned it yet. People have just said you lose a portion of your HP. Now in Demon Souls, you would lose 50% of your HP. Demon Souls being the Dark Souls predecessor, as you guys should hopefully know by now. But in Demon Souls, you would lose 50% of your HP. And also, apparently, this has been reported by someone else. I don't think EpicNameBro's said it. I'm not 100% sure because this is actually the second video that I'm doing on this because there was a problem with the first video. But either way, I'm not exactly sure if ENB said it or VaatiVidya said it because he saw it somewhere. But apparently your HP also gets drained while you're in hollow form. So you're like slowly taking damage, kind of like almost like a poison even. So that's another incentive not to be in hollow form because let's face it, in Dark Souls you spent a lot of your time in hollow form, and I don't think that From Software actually liked that because a lot of players wouldn't be in human because there's no specific advantage to being human apart from the fact that you can summon other players and kindle your bonfire. And if you die after that, just like, man, whatever, I don't really care. So at that point, a lot of players would just opt into, I'll just be a friggin' hollow. Who gives a damn? It doesn't really change all that much. Now, if they're actually going to make you lose some hit points as well as drain your hit points slowly, and the reason why I feel that this is actually that this should actually happen, because some people might be saying that doesn't seem like a whole lot fair if you're hollowed being punished by your HP getting drained. And the thing is that in Demon Souls, a lot of people would also just play in soul form because they wouldn't want to change something which was the world tendency. And the fact of the matter is there really wasn't that many penalties either to being in soul form apart from losing half of your HP. And you guys may be like, oh my God, losing half of my HP, that's ridiculous. That's some really tough thing. What do you mean there's no penalties? Well, if there, as you guys should know by now, there's varying degrees of skill within the Dark Souls and Demon Souls community. So really good players usually even just walk around through the world in hyper mode all the time. So it doesn't really matter for them if they have half of their HP, since they usually run around with less than 30% of their HP so that they can do as much damage as possible. So that's not really such a big deal. However, if you're constantly losing health, that could be a problem because then you can't actually maintain hyper mode. And maintaining it would actually be hard because you'd have to constantly heal, and having to constantly heal is a problem because if you know, there's problems in the fact that your health pool keeps getting drained. So obviously you want to be in human form a lot more in Dark Souls 2 than in Dark Souls, than in the current Dark Souls. And there's also another thing, which is you can actually be invaded while you're hollowed. This is great because I did not like the fact that you can't get invaded when you're hollowed, because that just makes it really easy for people to play online and avoid the penalties of playing online, like avoiding that thing where people can invade you. And I think that people should actually be, look at invasions like in an adrenaline rush. I mean, back when I used to play MMOs like World of Warcraft and stuff like that, I would always prefer playing in PvP servers, despite the fact that the people that I was playing with, they'd be like, no, man, let's go to a PvE server. And it's like, you bunch of goddamn sissies. I love going on PvP servers. And look, I'm not that good at PvP. You guys know it. And I'm not that good at PvP in MMOs either. I'm not amazing at PvP. So why do I like going to PvP servers? Adrenaline rush. It's that feeling that you get, that you know that at any point in time, a player can just jump you and kill you. You get an adrenaline rush. And I like that. I like that stuff. I'm sorry. I know that maybe I'm weird like that, but I like it. Either way, you can now get invaded while you're hollowed, so that's a good thing. You can still play offline, apparently, if you really want. You can go ahead and unplug your console. I don't think that From Software is really going to force people to be online 100% of the time. At least I don't think that would be too smart, so hopefully they won't do that. Because I understand a lot of people want to take their time, want to fool around, want to play, and not really be bothered by someone else. But I think that people need to come out of that shell. I mean, sure, maybe you're doing something special, like suppose that you're doing something like my Gravelorded run. And let me just tell you something. In regards to my Gravelorded run, the only reason why it's offline is because Games 4 Windows Live has been buggy as balls, and I can't get the damn thing to become online. So that's one of the main reasons why that playthrough is offline. But I understand that some people may be going like for speed runs or something like that. So sure, if you want to go offline for that. But if you're just normally playing the game, really, come online. Have some fun. Get killed by someone. Trust me. Despite the fact that you might be frustrated a little bit, you'll enjoy that adrenaline rush. At least that's the way I feel. Either way, there's going to be several improvements in the terms of covenants, and there's going to be a lot bigger component to the multiplayer of the game, which I feel that is great, because for starters, currently covenants, people really only use them for invasions, and there are a lot of covenants that are basically useless. Like for instance, Way of the White at this point in the game, when everybody knows what Way of the White does and whatnot, and there's stuff like DSC fix and whatever. Way of the White is just a pretty much pointless covenant. The Sunlight, what is it called? The Sunlight? No, not the Sunlight Guard. The Princess Guard is pretty pointless covenant unless you want to use 2 specific miracles. But really, getting a covenant just for getting miracles, The Covenant of the Daughters of Chaos, you guys might be, oh, that covenant is useful because you get the pyromancies. Yeah, but you get the pyromancies and then you can just leave the covenant because you're not forced to stick with it, and you can go do something else. So there's not that much point to the Daughters of Chaos either. And there's more covenants like that. There's more covenants throughout the game that don't make a lot of sense. So hopefully they will make every single covenant that they put in the game to be an actual meaningful covenant that gives you a meaningful experience and changes the way that you play the game itself. Hopefully, one can only hope. There's going to be dedicated servers, which is the reason why they're doing this particular beta test in October, to kind of test out those dedicated servers. I've said it before, there's going to be dedicated servers. I believe that Tanimura-san said it in my interview at E3 that there's going to be dedicated servers. And like I said, that is the reason for the beta tests that are taking place. Now, the covenants are, like I said, the covenants are going to be a little bit different. And something that EpicNameBro talked about was the Covenant of Blue. Now, the Covenant of Blue is a covenant that basically you can join. And once you join that covenant, if you get invaded by someone else, the Covenant of Blue is actually going to go and summon someone else to help you. Now, that someone else will be associated with another covenant. So there's going to be like 2 different covenants. One is going to be the Covenant of Blue, and the other one is going to be the Sentinels of Blue, which are going to be kind of like the guardians of the Covenant of Blue. And the way this is going to work out is, like I said, if you join the Covenant of Blue, whenever you get invaded, the game is going to look to see if there's an active player in the Sentinels of Blue, and it is going to summon that player to help you fight off your invader. And you can join the Sentinels of Blue if you want to get summoned to help other players out when they are getting attacked. This mechanic kind of reminded me a little bit of the Dark Moon Blades. Now, if you guys remember, Dark Moon Blades are supposed to punish the guilty. Now, the guilty in Dark Souls 1 is a very loose concept. So it's like you kill the wrong NPC and boom, you're guilty. But also, if you invade another player and you get, I believe, indicted, I don't remember exactly how the indicted mechanics work, but you can buy like this item, or is it even a consumable? I've never done it, but you can buy an item from Oswald the Partner, who is the guy that's at the top of the Bell Gargoyles. And you can buy that item, and if someone kills you, you can indict them. And then I believe that at that point, the Dark Moon Blades, whenever they try invading, they can also end up invading the world of that person. So that's why the Sentinels of Blue kind of feel in line with the Dark Moon Blades. They're there to kind of punish the guilty, like people that are just killing other people. The Sentinels of Blue are there to kind of help you out and prevent this from being just a one-sided battle. So the Covenant of Blue would be most likely the ideal covenant for starting players that are new to the franchise, players that don't know exactly how the invasion mechanics work, how the summon mechanics work. They might want to join the Covenant of Blue because obviously the people who join the Sentinels of Blue are going to be people that want to do PvP, that know exactly what's going to happen. Once they get summoned, they know that they have to go and kill the other person. So that's obviously good to have someone to help you out so that you don't get griefed all the time. And this kind of makes sense with the fact that they're making multiplayer a bigger component of the game, because if you think about it, like, for instance, let's just say, okay, from now on, you're forced to go multiplayer. Like, a lot of people are going to be turned off by that because a lot of people don't like getting invaded all the time and getting their asses kicked. So a lot of people might even resort to going offline. However, if you have a covenant like this in place, people can actually go and say, okay, I have a better chance of surviving now because someone will actually be summoned to help me out. Now, obviously, there might be people who use this mechanic basically to gank, which, you know, it's just gonna happen regardless of what you do. There's gonna be ganks in Dark Souls 2, just like there's ganks in Dark Souls 1. But however, stuff is gonna change a little bit because of the way that ENB talked about the Soapstones. So yeah, basically giving a little bit of a sum up here. If you join the Covenant of Blue, you can get help if someone actually invades you, assuming that there will be a Sentinel of Blue player around. If you join the Sentinels of Blue, you're going to get summoned to fight off invaders, but if you get invaded yourself, you are not going to get help. You're going to have to fend for yourself pretty much. And obviously, there's also going to be like a Dark Wraith type covenant, which for players that want to just invade other players and kill the crap out of them, because you can be the bad guys in Dark Souls if you so desire to be. And those people can also be invaded, and they're also not going to get help. So that's kind of the few things that we kind of are hypothesizing for covenants, according to what EpicNameBro's said. And like we've said previously, with the multiplayer being a bigger component to the game, most likely covenants will also be a much bigger part of the game as well. And it makes sense. And I'm actually happy to see that because, you know, like I said, there's a lot of covenants right now in the game that don't really make a lot of sense. And hopefully these covenants will kind of stray away from the alignment thing, because, you know, covenants in Dark Souls supposedly have an alignment, like, for whatever reason, the path of the dragon is neutral evil or whatever. And it's like, it doesn't really make a lot of sense, in my opinion. A lot of these covenants are actually more of a gray area than necessarily aligned with a specific alignment, so to speak. So I hope that they play more towards that gray area, as opposed to just saying, no, this covenant is lawful good, this covenant is lawful neutral. And it's like, that stuff doesn't even make sense out of Dungeons and Dragons, guys. I mean, come on. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. And it didn't really influence anything in Dark Souls 1, as far as I'm aware. Just the fact that you're in the covenant of the Dark Wraiths. You're, what was it? Chaotic evil? Lawful evil? Were they lawful evil? I don't remember if they were the ones who were lawful evil. I think they probably were. But either way, you're like in the most evil of covenants. And that changes absolutely nothing. Well, I guess it kind of changed the fact that instead of going to Frampt, you would have to go to Kaith. But apart from that, either way, let's talk about the Soapstones and White Phantoms. And this is actually something that concerns me quite a bit because of what EpicNameBro's said in his video, which is the fact that apparently there's going to be different types of white sign Soapstones. He mentioned just normal white sign soapstones and small white sign soapstones. So I'm not sure if there's going to be large white sign soapstones, if that's going to be a thing or not. But either way, the difference between the small white sign soapstone and the normal one is the time that the summon will last. There will be a timer for when you summon a white phantom, and the better the soapstone that he uses, the more time he will be able to help you out. Now, this makes me think about, so are these soapstones consumables? Are they dependent upon the covenant that you join? How does that work? Because, I mean, let's face it. Suppose you have, okay, I have a small white sign soapstone, or I have a normal white sign soapstone. Why would I ever use the small one? I don't know. It's like because I wanted to pressure the other player into being faster. Doesn't make a lot of sense, because usually when people do summoning like that, they want to genuinely help out the other player, and also they want to get humanity because they want to go defeat the boss, get humanity. But usually not even for getting humanity. As far as I'm aware, people in Dark Souls most of the time do jolly cooperation just for the fun of doing jolly cooperation. That is the main reason why people do it, in my opinion and in my interpretation anyways. I mean, I know that when I play with my friends, it's like, oh yeah, man, we totally need to go get those humanities. It's like, doesn't make a lot of sense. So there's going to be different soapstones. And like I said, I'm wondering if they are consumables, because otherwise there really is no reason, if you have two of them, to use the smaller one. So if they are consumables, that makes me wonder, how many souls are they going to cost? Is that going to be a problem? If they're not consumables, they might instead be locked according to the covenant that you take. Like, for instance, maybe being a Sentinel of Blue will give you access to a better soapstone, since your covenant is essentially about helping newer players out. Whereas if you're a Dark Wraith, you will have access to only the small white soapstone because, well, let's face it, you're constantly invading and killing people, so they don't really want you helping other people out. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with that, but one of those things is going to have to happen if they're going to implement different size soapstones. That's my theory anyways. Either they're going to be consumable or they're going to be associated with a specific covenant, because otherwise it just doesn't make any sense. Why would you use the smaller one unless you get a better reward for using the smaller one? I don't know. Either way, we will see when more details come out of it. Now, on top of that, there's also the fact that you can't really carry other players anymore. And what do we mean by this? Since there's this timer, whenever the White Phantom actually kills monsters for the host, the timer goes down faster. So the more monsters the White Phantom kills, the last time he can actually stay in the world and help out the host. And obviously, that is going to be a problem for stuff like, let's say, you guys know that I've done full playthroughs with Pally Time. This is going to be a problem about that, because we're not really going to be able to just summon each other and be able to stay in the same world for as long as we want, since we're going to have a time limit. But we still don't know exactly how that stuff is going to work, so I don't want to speculate too much on it. But just remember that you can't just carry other players anymore, since the more you kill, basically the faster the timer runs out. So that is going to be a problem. But then again, maybe the other player could just resummon you, but that doesn't make any sense. So why would there be a timer? Maybe they are consumables, because if the other player can just resummon you, it kind of makes sense that soapstones will be consumables from that standpoint. I don't know, because there's just not a lot of information to really go down on that. So that's all I can really say about it. But yeah, basically whenever someone summons a White Phantom, the host itself will have to contribute a lot more than what he actually has to do right now in Dark Souls. Because let's face it, in Dark Souls right now, you can summon me to Anor Londo and I can do the Anor Londo archers for you, open up the door, and you didn't really do anything. So yeah, that is definitely a possibility. According to NB, Dark Souls 2 is looking to be a lot more hardcore than both Demon Souls and Dark Souls, and that is definitely a good thing. And by hardcore, he's basically talking about there's going to be more PvP, because there's going to be a bigger component to the multiplayer. There's going to be bigger components to Covenants. So this is a good thing. The one bad thing that I have to point out in all of this is that there's still a 4-player limit. And then again, I understand it's like a limit of the consoles. I mean, right now, if you go to PlayStation 3, you summon 2 players, you're going to be welcome. Basically, the game's going to welcome you to Slideshowville because that's what's going to happen. Let's face it. The game does go chop down ridiculously, especially if you go into Blighttown with 1 summon. Good luck. Just good luck doing anything because the game is going to slow down to a damn crawl. And I've even had people in the past in one of my videos saying, "Oh man, that only affects the PlayStation 3. The 360's got no problems like that." And I'm sorry, dude. Get real, okay? Just get real. Then again, I'm kind of digging up old wounds. Sorry about that. Forget about that one. Either way, let's keep moving onward because this part that we're getting to right now is actually the thing that had me the most excited about, because this was the most kind of like significant information that really came out of that particular video for me personally, which is we're going to be talking about stats. And for starters, first thing he said, attunement now affects casting speed. Awesome, because to be completely honest, I'd never really liked the fact that if you wanted to really min-max and do a spellcaster, it's got to be a dexterity build. That's it. That's the reason why my self-grave-lorded build, the Pyro Lord, is a dexterity build, because you want that dexterity to increase casting speed. Because I know that probably there are a couple of Dark Souls players out there that still don't know this, but yes, dexterity increases your casting speed all the way up until 45 dexterity, at which point I believe it kind of caps. So you obviously want to have dexterity if you're doing a caster heavy build. Otherwise, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. So it's a good thing that in Dark Souls 2, they're shifting that towards attunement. So if you want to do a pure spellcaster, you can use strength-based weapons if you want. Like, let's say you want to do a strength hybrid spellcaster, actually. That's what I wanted to say. You can do a strength hybrid spellcaster because casting speed is going to come from attunement. It's also going to give you more reasons to pour points into attunement as opposed to just putting enough points into attunement to get the attunement slots that you want. Although I don't even know how attunement slots work in Dark Souls 2, so we'll see about that. But either way, it's definitely a good thing that casting speed is getting moved on to attunement. Now, the other thing is intelligence is going, apparently, like I said, this is all beta information. This is all stuff that ENB saw during the beta. Intelligence is apparently going to affect fire and magic scaling. And by this, what he said was that he felt like, because let's face it, this is also ENB translating Japanese to English, and you guys know that Japanese to English is not necessarily a direct translation. There's a lot of stuff in there for those of you that don't know a single thing about Japanese. Trust me, it's not as easy as saying, I don't know, let's go with a Latin word. Ignis means fire. And it's like, from Japanese to English, doesn't quite work like that. It even sounds almost like Indian in a way. It's like, what was that word? They said something about a word for Japanese. Oh, yeah, I saw something like this on Persona. It's interesting. The word for love in Japanese, initially, the first time that someone said love in Japanese, it was something like, it's a beautiful moonlight, isn't it? So that kind of gives you an idea of how stuff gets translated from Japanese into English. It's not necessarily literal, so all this stuff, take it with a grain of salt. Either way, his interpretation was that apparently intelligence is going to affect fire and magic scaling. So magic scaling is already affected by intelligence in Dark Souls, and that makes sense. Fire scaling, when it comes to weapons, there really isn't a stat that affects fire scaling. So when I heard this, I was like, so that means if I enchant a weapon with fire and then I raise my intelligence, that weapon's going to do more damage. And right now you can't do that in Dark Souls. So I was naturally excited about this because I like elemental weapons. I haven't used elemental weapons in a long time. If you go look at my playthroughs, I haven't done elemental weapons in a long ass time. And the reason for that is that currently, in Dark Souls, there is no scaling of fire-based weapons. Sure, there's humanity scaling for a chaos weapon, but that's pretty static as well, because like you put 10 humanities, boom, you've capped that scaling. But that's what I mean, you know, because currently in Dark Souls, elemental weapons are usually used by people who just want to have high vitality builds. and they're not really useful for anything else apart from high vitality builds. Yeah, sure, you can get a really powerful weapon early on, but if you plan on actually taking your character beyond New Game Plus 1 and New Game Plus 2, your lightning weapons and fire weapons are gonna become kind of crappy. So it's nice having that be connected with a stat. That's my personal opinion anyways. I definitely like that. And also notice that this particular stat scales to different weapon enchants. By enchants, I mean, actually either making your weapon a fire weapon or making your weapon an enchanted weapon, which is the magic scaling weapon. The reason why it affects I think it's important to say why this particular stat affects two different things, magic and fire. Because let's face it, right now, if you happen to have an Uchigatana of fire, a plus 10, what do you call it? A fire Uchigatana plus 10 or Uchigatana fire plus 10, whatever. The maximum that you can possibly get out of a fire upgraded weapon. And you're like, okay, I have my fire upgraded weapon. I'm going to go kick some ass. And then you go to Demon Ruins and you go to fight Ceaseless Discharge, or you go to fight the Centipede Demon. You're going to have a tough time because those monsters are pretty much immune to fire damage. So it makes sense that it also scales magic, so that for those fights where your enemies are strong against fire, you will switch to a magic-based weapon and you will use magic against your enemies, or you will switch to your wand. What do you call those things? Catalyst. You will switch to your catalyst and you start shooting magic at them instead, because obviously fire is not going to work. So that's a good thing. And then we look at Faith, which is going to be affecting lightning and dark elemental. Now, dark elemental, when he said dark elemental, I'm going to assume that he is talking about something like occult damage. So lightning and occult damage. Again, you have the same situation. There are several enemies in Dark Souls which are somewhat resistant to lightning. So when you encounter those, you might want to switch to your weapon that does dark elemental damage or occult damage, or whatever you want to call it. Because if it's not occult damage, I don't know exactly what dark elemental is. Could it be dark magic, kind of like beads and stuff like that? Don't know. Could be the case. Might not be the case. Who knows? Either way, it looks like dexterity is going to be affecting poison and bleed scaling, which is also, again, it's a positive thing. So if you get a monster that is resistant to poison, you're going to switch up to a bleed-based weapon. If you get a monster that is resistant to bleed, you will switch up to a poison-based weapon, which it's definitely a good thing, in my opinion. And I know that this is going to, a lot of people are going to be upset because everybody hates when you get those people that invade you and all they're trying to do is poison and basically taking your HP down with poison. I'm sorry, I know I'm scratching my nose a lot. I have an itchy nose. What can I say? But either way, I like the fact that dexterity also affects poison and bleed. And then he got the strength, and he said apparently strength does not have anything new. And this didn't really surprise me, because here's the thing. Right now in Dark Souls, if you happen to have a lightning-based weapon, whenever you come up to a lightning-based enemy, you're going to have a hard time. You're going to have another weapon to deal with that enemy. Now, the way I used to deal with that when I had elemental weapons is I would have a chaos version of the weapon, and then I would have the lightning version of the weapon. When I was against lightning-resistant enemies, I would switch to the fire one, and vice versa. Now, however, if you go for a strength-based weapon, you don't really have to choose. You just grab your big-ass weapon and you smack someone down. That's the way it goes down, because strength in Dark Souls is strength or just whatever stat you happen to need to level up for your specific weapon, because currently in Dark Souls, dexterity can also be a very powerful physical damage ability. Like if you grab something like, say, a Great Scythe, you're going to be pretty beastly, or even a Boulder Side Sword, you're going to do a lot of physical damage. So apparently it seems that for Dark Souls 2, they want dexterity to be more about poisons and bleeds, which makes sense. And then strength, basically if you pick up a strength weapon, you really don't have to worry that much about switching elements, because strength is one of the, physical damage is one of the most reliable forms of damage in Dark Souls right now. So that is the reason, in my opinion, why there's nothing particularly new about the strength stat in Dark Souls 2, and it kind of makes sense. If anything, what they can do with strength is make it easier for you to stagger enemies. Like the amount of strength that you have will allow you to stagger enemies easier. We'll see about that. And then he mentioned something which still has me really conflicted, which is a stat that affects actions like raising your shield trap, disarmament, and evasion. And apparently this stat is called agility. Now, I've actually sent him a message through Twitter like, are you sure? Because that doesn't make a lot of sense. It would seem to me that agility should actually be something that is either connected with endurance or with dexterity. Because like we've said previously, something that they definitely have said they want to do is they want to make the game accessible to more people. And by accessible, they want people to be able to more easily understand the mechanics and the intricacies of Dark Souls 2. And if that is the case, why would they want to add another stat that is going to actually be basically a more complex thing that people will have to balance out with that specific stat? Because if they add that stat, you then have, I mean, I assume that in that case, dexterity is not really going to affect anything that you do and when it comes to defensive stats, because that is what this stat seems to be, some kind of a stat that revolves around defense. So then I asked him, so was endurance there? And he said that he felt that endurance was there, but he didn't really take any notes on it, probably because endurance was there, but there wasn't anything different about endurance, so he didn't really feel the need for that. But I mean, at that point, you're like, because endurance is effectively a defensive stat. If you look at endurance, it's basically like, okay, so what does endurance really do for me? It allows me to carry more armor and equip heavier weapons. So in a way, it is an offensive stat because it lets you carry a heavier weapon, but it is mostly a defensive stat because it allows you to carry heavier armor, and it defines how you can roll. If you can do fast roll, mid roll, slow roll, that kind of stuff. Damn, my nose is itchy. God damn it, it's killing me. Let me have a drink here. Like ENB, I'm also drinking tea, but I friggin' loathe tea. I'm only doing it because I have to. Either way, let's continue onwards. So this stat definitely has me really confused. However, the thing about trap disarmament, that sounds like really cool, because if you guys know, like if you've played an RPG that is based around Dungeons and Dragons, a great portion of an RPG like that is actually preventing traps through the use of a rogue and stuff like that, and that stuff is fun. So I do like seeing something mentioned about trap disarmament, because for one, there's going to be traps, and two, if you invest in this stat, there's going to be different ways for you to navigate those traps. So I like that particular part of it, but I still feel that having this additional stat placed in the game, I just feel like, look, you just need to link all this stuff into endurance. And again, let's face it, this can all be changed, so we still don't know exactly what's going to go down. We will have to see about that. Now, he also mentioned new parry mechanics, which is something that I've also mentioned during my E3 hands-on video, which is that parry. I didn't notice the fact that parry took longer, but then again, ENB is a lot better at parrying than I am. But I didn't really notice the fact that parrying took longer. But what I did notice is that I thought I hadn't landed a single parry, but according to ENB, he landed parries, and what would happen is the mobs actually fell down. And that happened to me during the E3. I made a mob fall down with my shield. I just thought it was like something weird that happened, but apparently that's the new parry mechanics. And he said that instead of just pressing the button to do the riposte straight ups, like parry, riposte, just like kind of what you do in Dark Souls right now, you actually have to wait a couple of split seconds before you throw your riposte. Otherwise, you're going to fail and you're just going to hit the mob. That is what happened to me. I failed all of my ripostes. I did not land a single one. I even asked the guy, is parrying and riposte not implemented? What the hell is going down? And he's like, oh no, it's implemented. It's just really, really hard now. But either way, that is definitely interesting. It's a good thing that parrying is harder, because as Dark Souls 2 started growing older, so to speak, a lot of people became able to do parries a lot more reliably. So if it was the same exact mechanic, we would just go into Dark Souls 2 and be like, parry and riposte, because that's another thing that you guys need to take into consideration. Like, Dark Souls was easier for some players because of Demon Souls. Dark Souls 2 is going to be easier for a lot of players because of Dark Souls. That's just a fact, because the mechanics are very similar, and that is actually something that the crowd wants. We want those mechanics to be similar because it's very hard to improve upon that combat, that precision combat that Dark Souls provides. So it's a good thing that they're shifting a couple of things around to make people adapt to these new mechanics and still provide them with a challenging first experience. So in my opinion, this is definitely a good thing. And then it was interesting that something that he mentioned in his video, like the first things that he did in the beta was the first things that I tried doing as soon as I got my hands on it when I was at E3, which is first thing he tried doing is getting to the stats screen, and he started taking notes about the stats. I tried getting into the stats screen at the E3 demo. There was none. And after that, I was like, the second thing I tried doing is I wanted to get naked to see roll speeds and all that stuff. You couldn't unequip your gear. And that's the second thing he did as well. He basically unequipped his gear and tested out the rolls. Now, he said that his roll speed didn't really change between a fully equipped character and a naked character. Now, this doesn't really surprise me. And you guys might be like, oh, but what's going to happen? Is weight not going to be a factor? No, guys, just relax. Here's what's happening. So according to the description of classes that he made in this video, the description of classes that were available for him to play, those classes seem to be the exact same ones that were available for people to play at the E3 demo. Now, those classes are not final. Those are pre-built characters. Pre-built characters for the specific purpose of playing through whatever levels they have available for you to play. And I feel that those pre-built characters, they probably haven't implemented the mechanics of stat scaling. So the difference in weight is not actually felt. They just assume that people are going to be playing the game while fully clothed. Because let's face it, not a lot of journalists actually play that much Dark Souls like someone like ENB or me does, you know? A lot of journalists just go there, they die like 15 times and whatever. It's like, okay, it's still hard, I'm going to write about it. But it's like, not a lot of journalists are going to do the same stuff that me and ENB are going to do, like what I did at E3, like trying to figure out everything about the game as much as I possibly could, which is the same thing that he did. So obviously they're not that concerned about stat scaling at that point. And that is why I feel it's like, look, this character is going to have medium roll and that's it. That's what this character is going to get. And they don't fiddle around that much because this is a beta, guys. Remember that. So that is my conclusion. I believe that obviously weight will affect your roll speed just like your endurance and everything else. And the reason why he couldn't see that is simply because that stat scaling hasn't been implemented yet. So it doesn't really change. And each of the characters had a different role, which was pre-programmed into them for the purpose of that specific beta. But that is just my personal conclusion. I could be wrong. I could be right. Like I said, all of this is subject to change anyway. It's just something for us to keep in mind as we are moving forward to the release of Dark Souls 2. Then he also talked about having a conversation with a filthy merchant, which is pretty much a Demon Souls throwback from the Valley of Defilement. Anyone who has played Demon Souls should know about the filthy merchant who would always tell you off because you wouldn't buy anything. And she's like, I need to feed my child. And you don't buy nothing. Look, you want my child to die? I remember that the dialogue was something along those lines. The next thing he said is that he wasn't able to slide down ladders because he jumped off ladders, and I had already mentioned that in my particular E3 video, which is the fact that you can jump down ladders, but if you press and hold the circle button, you're going to just slide down just like you do in Dark Souls. But the thing that's going to cause, it's going to cause a lot of people just suicide off of ladders because we're all used to just, there's muscle memory in people now. For people who've played as much Dark Souls as me and ENB, there's muscle memory there. Excuse me. There's muscle memory, and what that means is that we're just going to go up to a ladder and press circle and expect to slide down when your character is actually going to jump off. It's actually a good thing that the character jumps off the ladder because a lot of the times you would go onto ladders and then you have to either slide down, you have to like try to smack someone. If someone is below you, you have to try to smack them with your ass, which is not really a good thing. But so basically it's going to add an additional mechanic where if you're really in a hurry, you can just jump off a ladder, and it's going to be definitely useful for speedrunners. I can already tell that speedrunners are they're going to slide up into a certain point to the ladder, and when they know that it's going to be safe to fall down without dying, they're going to just jump off because it's going to be faster than sliding down. It's going to add an additional layer of mechanic to the game, which is good. I just would prefer if they use like a different button, like maybe X to jump off the ladder and use the normal slide, because I don't think there's any point on the X button while you're on the ladder. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's anything to do. So you could just press X to get off the ladder and then press circle to slide down, and it would avoid that confusion. Either way, he also mentioned that enemies are more aggressive. And this is something that I mentioned as well. I told you guys that the AI has been definitely improved. They can tell when you're in a weak spot and they will know to charge you down. And they can tell when you are not in a weak spot and they will play more conservatively. I told you guys about this in my E3 video, and a lot of people were like, oh, the stuff that you're saying is already implemented in Dark Souls 1 and blah, 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 whatever. What you're saying doesn't make any sense. It's like, I'm sorry, guys. I told you about it, and as you can see, ENB feels the same way, which is that monsters are more aggressive. This is what he said. And in my opinion, what he means by that is probably monsters charged him down while he was drinking, which happened to me. And monsters can more adequately judge the battle situation, and they know whether or not to engage on you, and they know when you're weaker or when you're stronger, and they will know when is the best time to be aggressive and when is the best time to be defensive. This is something that I personally noticed as well, which I guess is why he said that the enemies felt more aggressive. Then he talked about how the demo was actually harder than both Demon Souls and Dark Souls. And like I said, that is probably due to the fact that the character is intentionally underpowered in those demos. Because in the demo that I did at E3, I even asked the guy, look, this character is basically underpowered for the level we're in, right? And he told me, yeah, it is. And I'm like, yeah, I figured that, because it was actually being really hard, like needlessly hard, and I can understand that. This character is not properly leveled to be in this area. So the character during those demos is intentionally underpowered. So you can't really draw a lot of conclusion about the difficulty of the game, in my opinion. Then he talked about some barbarians that had a berserker rage and chased him down, and he couldn't really block their attacks. So that's kind of cool. I didn't see those enemies in my E3 demos, so I kind of like that. So those guys bring in a little bit of variety to your normal, I'll just roll and whatever and avoid everyone, because there's going to be normal enemies and maybe the charge guys show up all of a sudden. So it's going to kind of force you into negotiating those fights in a different way. Then he also mentioned that he was impressed with the Zweihände, which I'm not exactly sure what that about. He just said that he liked the moveset, I believe, something about that, whatever. Then he said that the leaping attack looks awesome. Maybe it had a little bit of a longer distance to it. And I don't think that the leaping attack was implemented during a E3. And if it was, I didn't notice any difference. So maybe that's something that changed since from then until now. So I don't really know what that is about. Well, I guess we will see if we get access to that particular beta. Then he said that he had different degrees of backstab success with some weapons. And me personally, I didn't notice this. It just felt like backstabs were harder overall to pull off. And a lot of the times, due to the new animations with the backstabs, which look really cool, some of the times you wouldn't even realize that you were actually already performing a backstab until you saw that second swing. Because some of the backstab animation would be like you would slash once and then slash twice and slash 3 times. And you wouldn't even realize that you were doing a backstab, because the backstabs now are just so natural. They make so much more sense. And I guess that maybe with that, because backstabs in Dark Souls, like if you go to perform backstab, your character kind of like magnetically attaches to whatever you happen to be backstabbing. In Dark Souls 2, that doesn't happen at all. That's what I said. Basically, your character stays wherever he is, and if you succeed on the backstab, there's not going to be like magic turning of the other character or magic docking of your character into the other character. Nothing like that. It just feels natural. Your character just does whatever the backstab animation happens to be. So, like I said, it just felt harder to pull off overall, and I don't think there's going to be different degrees of difficulty in performing backstabs, because I think that would again mess with the accessibility that they were talking about. So I just think the backstabs are going to be a little bit harder to pull off until people get around to familiarizing themselves with the animation systems in Dark Souls 2. Then something that he didn't mention was that was something that I mentioned in my video, which was I was taking damage while doing backstabs. He didn't mention this because apparently he never got anything swinging at him while he was doing backstab, so we don't know if that changed or not, but I don't see any reason for that changing, so I'm going to assume that you still take damage while you're doing a backstab animation because that makes sense. He also mentioned that Sticky White Stuff is back and that Dark Souls 2 feels a lot of a mix between Demon Souls and Dark Souls, and that is a good thing, ladies and gentlemen. That's pretty much all I had to say in regards to ENB's video. If you still haven't seen it, make sure to check the description. Hopefully the link will be there. As per usual, thank you very much for watching me. Thank you very much for watching. Leave me your comments and feedback in the comment section below. And I will see you guys in the next one.